They say the only good cockroach is a dead cockroach, and even then, the encounter is not usually described as a pleasant one. The word itself whiffs of trash and rot, death and decay. The name in my mother tongue, Afrikaans, is far more poetic. You can't help saying it out loud. Kakkerlak. The tongue dances on the roof of your mouth, and bowing, it finishes on the gratifying sharp K. There is a hailstorm of bullets outside. Sharp steel stones that rip through plaster and glass in untidy explosions. I'm surprised there are still bullets left in this world. There is a scream. Human. It's a faraway sound, far enough away for it not to drill into my head. It's muffled by meters of time and space and waste bodies' bones burning. Sweet meat smoke. At least they can scream. They are alive. Heat streams at me, burning my 6 brittle legs, forcing me to scurry, reminding me that I too am living, whether I want to be or not. There are bullets, but there is no food. The Führer would have been pleased. I can't remember what butter tastes like. Against all odds, I found a postage stamp and have been eating its glue. I'm under a brick that's under a beam that's under a roof tile that used to be a house. A building which used to be someone's home. I tried to imagine what it was like. A neat rectangle of rooms with carpets and curtains. A bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen drawer that rolls open without sticking. It's a pretty stamp, full of petals. Namaqualand daisies, maybe. I'm not sure. Flowers only live in dreams now. There is colour only in imagination. God knows how this square miracle of a blooming postage stamp survived this civil war. Perhaps there are still flowers in other parts of the world. We have no way of knowing if this apocalypse is exclusively inherent to South Africa. No radio or TV or news. Maybe the rest of the world has also exploded. Or maybe they are living in a clean bubble of declination, at least relinquishing Africa to the Africans. When they closed their borders to us in '86, we were sure it was a temporary measure. Berlinesque, a wall ready to fall. Besides, only people rich enough to buy plane tickets would be able to take refuge in Europe, Australia, America. They should have welcomed the wealthy expats, doctors, lawyers, engineers. It's not like they had to deal with ragged lice-infected fugitives camping at their borders, scratching for handouts like our neighbouring countries had to. The West's walls went up, regardless. The walls went up, and they never came down. Pre-war. We decided to stay, despite my wife begging me to leave. It wasn't because I had hope. It was because I was caught by my duty to my country. A rusty rat trap, flypaper. I thought that if we fought hard enough, we could stop South Africa's descent into hell. Thought we could, in some way, hold on to that which was ours. We were the 90s version of the bitter einders, 100-year-old lesson we failed to learn. When the crocodile liberators known as the freedom fighters overthrew the government, they renamed the country Nkululeko, freedom. But no one took much notice. When your house has been burnt to nothing and your family sleep forever in a shallow grave, you stop caring about abstractions like place names. Our duty was to stop the FF at all costs. Before that, we were called the Special Branch, and our job was to monitor any treasonous movements caught resisting or plotting against apartheid. After a while, intelligence was not enough, and we had to take certain matters into our own hands. Bantu was one of those matters. Before him, Koate, Modipani, other nameless faces that still come to me, involuntarily fluttering my wings. But Bantu's death was a victory. We celebrated that day with our families. Sun-warmed tins of lion lager, potato salad and braaivleis in our vast back gardens, peppermint crisp tart, coffee and hertzoggies, shiny pink foreheads, bulging khaki bellies. Colours leak in and stain my memories. An eruption rocks the earth. It's difficult to tell who is fighting whom nowadays. It used to be simple. The majority fighting the minority for their liberty. The minority with their claws so deeply hooked in the upside-down, inside-out reality they had created for themselves, the idea that this country belonged to them, that this country belonged to us. I was one of them, after all. In a world of color, it was black versus white. Politicians and terrorists and cops spilling blood of equal redness in equal measure until you could no longer distinguish who the terrorists were. Turns out, we were all terrorists. When President Botha was assassinated, we didn't leave our house for a week. Double-bolted the doors and lived off our emergency supplies of koo beans, canned kuyavels, and a bulk pack of bar ones. Then Viljoen came in, took over, and we came up for air. One of the terrorists we had imprisoned on Robben Island, one of the biggest troublemakers, had managed to drum up support overseas, and there was pressure to release him, despite the innocent lives he had claimed. He was a popular leader, and there was talk locally of him becoming the next president of South Africa. We laughed into our brandy and cokes. Viljoen organized a press junket to show the world on a live broadcast that one of their struggle heroes was to be a free man. People lined the streets for kilometers with their placards and bright yellow shirts. During his speech, his skull was ripped apart by a lead soft-point, boat-tailed, copper-jacketed bullet. He fell backwards into his family's arms. Everyone went badol, and that was the end of South Africa. Nkululeko. Of course, it had always been inevitable. The arrogant few can only hold down the ardent many for so long before there is thunder. No one knew who held the sighted rifle that day, but everyone suspected the Afrikaner reactionaries, a quasi-religious violent splinter group from the Avia. The AR would detonate 7 bombs for each one planted by Umkhonto weSizwe. The reactionaries were a volatile group, a dangerous combination of lack of expertise and excess of emotion. Big bombs, short fuses. They would often end up killing their own, our own. They believed the government was in the process of giving their country away and would do anything to prevent that from happening. Before the assassination, we monitored them as closely as the freedom fighters, but we were, of course, more sympathetic to their cause. They were our own delinquent teenage sons. I had a son once, a son and 2 daughters, all blonde-haired, but there is no use in thinking about that now. A state of emergency was declared. We had tanks and Caspers in the street, not only in the townships, but also in our scrubbed white suburbs. School kids were gunned down in golden sunshine, green farms scorched black. Knights of the long knives bled incarnadine. A continent of maids and garden boys stalked and snatched their employers' lives while they slept. Mothers took their own lives, and the sky that used to be so vital and blue was damned to monochrome. Fevered children resisted sleep with their eyes wide and rolling in terror. I remember holding their clammy little hands, pale skin always sweet-smelling. Their fears scratched at my soul. Sleepless nights of counting our gifts. The children were scared, but they were breathing. Sometimes, when I can no longer think of what is real, I abandon it for fantasies of what my life may have been like. What my daughters would look like, what my son would be doing for a living, the feel of my wife's warm skin against my chest. Anniversaries, birthdays, weddings. Dare I imagine balloons or cake? So wonderful and otherworldly. I dream of having a human body again. I dream of a hot shower, even though I know there is neither electricity nor water. The mad luxury of showering with drinking water. It seems impossible now. Surely it never existed. One of the crazy creations of my mind, like the green crispness of an apple, or the feeling of a clean cotton pillow on my cheek. Now I keep company with mangy rats and maggots. I am condemned to the darkness. Cockroaches, being nocturnal, flee from light. Soft tongue against palate. Kakerlak. Nkululeko. In a way, I chose this condemnation. I knew what we were doing was against God, even in that godless reality. The thin pages of Bible made good fire starters. Most saved them till the other books were burnt. I had no such scruples. I gave up praying a long time ago. A prayer has never brought anyone back, never squeezed a heart to live, never pumped lost blood back into a child's washed-out body. My own heart is ancient and thick with scars. Its grizzled complaint. What do I want with a God who allows such atrocities to happen? We were so certain of him before, singing and sweating in claustrophobic churches, studying that black book, shaking, kneeling, gnashing, speaking in tongues. The power we felt, the blessings we had. He was everything. He would provide. We were his chosen ones. I don't know who forsook who first, but soon it became clear that he was no longer interested in our variety of lamb. It's not like he chose the other side either, the black sheep. They prayed just as hard as we did, but they were just as condemned and just as abandoned. Now, godless, I still sweat and shake and kneel and gnash. The only difference is that now I know it's all meaningless. Now Christ is nothing but a curse word. The day I chose this destiny was an ordinary day. Scrambled eggs on toast, fresh orange juice too tart for my taste. We always ate breakfast together, because I worked late and didn't always make it home in time for dinner. Everyday feasts of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. These concepts are now extinct. Cornflakes, caramel-colored toast, and fresh white milk for the children. Could that be true? We had a man in custody, Ngubani. We had detained him 2 weeks prior, and he was beginning to overstay his welcome. Despite sincere beatings, he refused us any information, and we were growing tired of his hard-headedness. It's not that he didn't feel the pain. His screams helped loosen the tongues of many of his neighbors. His stubbornness enraged us. That day, his face was still swollen from the week before, when a colleague gave him a siep in a sok klap, a beating with a bar of soap in a sock. The guard had reported that Ngubani slept sitting up, evidence of broken ribs. Even if he had chose to speak that day, we wouldn't have been able to release him. Rubbery lips split scabby. There would be too many questions about our interview methods. What the press and the pinkos and the liberal whiteys didn't understand was that we were doing it for them as much as for our own families. The fear of the blacks, the others, governing our country eclipsed the fear of any other outcome. What if they decided to take revenge? I wanted to give Ngubani a chance. I didn't enjoy torturing detainees. It made me feel nar, despite my experience in the field. I tried to be civil, even friendly, to soften him up. I purred into his ear. Didn't he understand that we needed the intelligence he had to make the country a safe place to live? That we have his people's best interests at heart? The smell of stale urine was like smoke in our nostrils. Fleas jumped. Did he know that if he talked to me, told me what I needed to know, that he may have saved a life, possibly many? Sour body odor in my movements and in his stillness. It could mean one less bullet in the back of a child, I remember saying. His dark skin was oily, and it repulsed me. I told him of how his wife had come to bring him fresh clothes, and how he could go home to her if he simply cooperated. She's staying with your sister in Pimville, Ngubani. Now isn't that good to know? Only a slight change in his breathing gave his emotion away. His wet copper eyes continued their defiant appraisal of the cell wall. Maybe we should pay your wife a visit tonight, I suggested. I walked my fingers along the bars of the cell, crinkled my eyes. I mentioned that I would take a few men along with me to make sure that she was thoroughly interrogated. He tried to ignore the electric undercurrent of my threat, but his breathing betrayed him, double-crossed by his own heart and lungs. His body, motionless, an ant in amber. Ngubani was a master at hiding his pain. Hot breath, but not a word spilt. My temper chewed at my nerves. The fuse was lit. This insolent black. Something inside me seized up and fractured, sending shards of violence into every fibre of my body. I wanted to smash his swollen head against the cement floor. Instead, I called for the plastic bag. I had killed men before, but never in such a premeditated way, and never out of rage. He struggled against me, and I kept squeezing. It was my defining moment, my becoming. What is the opposite of redemption? I felt something leave my body as his unfaithful heart stopped beating, as if I was the one dying. As if I was the one dying. When his tremor subsided, I loosened my grip on the blue bag, and some ascending ghost pulled on my intestines as if it didn't want to go. That day, I changed. That second. From then on, the mirror showed me empty sockets instead of eyes, and sleep was slippery. When I lost the girls, I lost part of my mind. Ivory skin slashed with crimson ribbons, rubies half hidden in flesh alabaster. Their fingers were cold by the time I touched them. After finding the girls with their open throats, I knew that my wife and son were lost to me too. It was just a matter of time. I was too numb to feel the detonation that took their lives and one of my arms. Numb, deaf and dumb. It wasn't a kindred curse. The same tragedy was playing out with neighbours and colleagues and far-flung friends. It seemed to me that no one was to survive the sudden civil war. My own death was expected. After a year of surviving my family, I was pinned between living and having no life. A weighted, weightless limbo. By then, I was fighting under the more nebulous white arm that included all the surviving whites in the country. Female and child soldiers were allocated the more precise weapons, guns and hand grenades. We had knives, metal poles, fists, knees, and teeth. Our values were necklaced. Morality was trussed up with rubber tires, doused with petrol, and set alight. Giant, toppling, acrid piles spitting fire. We reminded ourselves every day that we had been right to fear the blacks. We knew that if the blacks ever took over the country, it would be raped and ruined. Our nightmare had been realized. We had been right to keep them under control for as long as we could. My postage stamp glue is nearly finished. I wonder how long I will survive without food. I guess at 3 months. And then what? There are thousands of us. Will cockroach cannibalize cockroach? Will the cockroach inherit the earth? I am tired of this life, exhausted by every barbed minute. Part of my punishment is to have no way out. I have crawled into stinking toxic puddles and crackling fires, but still I live. Cursed to outlive my breaking point again and again until... What? What comes after reincarnation if that is what the curse is? Bantu, Koate, Modipani, Ngubani, Louise, Neil, Nora, Annalette. I wonder where they are. It wasn't only God who turned away from us, nature did too. Buds stopped blooming and fruiting, and vegetables turned to poisoned stones. She came at us with everything in her arsenal. Brown floods, biting insects, diseases that stole throats and eyes from everyone it touched, with a particular reach and fondness for babies. Soon, babies stopped being born at all. Some famines are crueler than lack of food. Towards my human end, we had all shaved heads and wore rags for hats. Sometimes it was hard to tell if someone was white or black because of the dirt and grease we used as camouflage. Our killing was mostly intuitive. We were a cackle of hyenas. But sometimes, in the chaos of hail and smoke, we would get it wrong. We shot one of our women in the stomach. We blew up a fellow fighter. We had been right. We had been right. Ngubani's swollen, unspeaking lips used to haunt me on those restless nights. I see his dusty-eyed wife, hopeful with her fresh laundry. I hear his snapping ribs, feel his red breath splattered on my neck. I was ransacking a house looking for food, looking for anything, and found death hidden in a kitchen drawer. A dark game of potluck. It was a surprise, but I was ready for it. I didn't know I had died until I woke up in this hard shell. A booby trap. A special branch trick. How the gods must have laughed. A bright white explosion followed by the friable ether of nothingness. An urge to breathe deep the pale air. A vacuum in my head. A lightness. The world had opened itself up to me, showing its core of warm white and an unutterable sense of relief. I was free for a moment. A sweet second. A sob. My body stretched from the ground to the clouds in a backward dive. Sweet oblivion. An ant in honey. Then something holds me, catches me, pulls me to the ground. The sky closes, my bleached family lie crumpled at my feet, lost in my dark shadow. The shadow that is Bantu, Koate, Modipani, Ngubani. The darkness I can't escape now as I sit hissing in this hole. Hissing, scuttling, dreaming of death's head. Things were simpler then. Black and white. A burnt-out coconut republic. It was such a long time ago. Now there is no color barrier. A man kills another man for his food, no matter the pigment of his skin. Gangs of marauders patrol the streets looking for women to rape and body parts to roast over open flame. Who cares if a monster is black or white? We were right. We were right. We were so very wrong. There are no children. Soon there will be only cockroaches. Kakarlaka. Inkululeko. The world is painted grey. We got our justice. They got their equality. We are them, and they are us. The country is truly colorblind. The end.